Hi and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Jess, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. It is April, which means we are now doing my March reading wrap up. I had a really good reading month. I read 19 books, which means in January, February and March I have read 19 books every time. This isn't sustainable. Do not get your hopes up. I do not see this lasting long term. But for now, it is a nice sort of rounded number for the first quarter of the year. It's quite satisfying. I read 5 physical books, 14 Kindle books, and I DNF'd 1 book, which I will get into shortly. My ratings, I had 2 5-star reads, I had 1 1-star read, and my average rating was 3.5. I've read 8,085 pages in March. I've started 6 series, but I finished 3 of them, so I think that's good. And I will put my current series count up here somewhere, wherever there's space on my screen. And with my spreadsheets, I read 3 of them, so I will also put a tally up of how many I've got left. I'm going to start with the bad, and I'm sorry, but I will start with my DNF just to get it out of the way. I DNF'd God of Pain by Rena Kent. I was really excited to get into the Renaverse, and I should have known because I didn't love God of Malice, but I thought it's the first book, it'll get better. Started to read God of Pain, had to DNF it because the FMC is 17 and I don't roll with that. Makes no sense to me. There is no need for the FMC to be 17. It brought nothing to the plot. It was, gives me the ick. So I DNF'd it. I still really want to get the MM romance within the Legacy of Gods. So if anyone has read that series, can you tell me if it's still worth continuing or if I just need to do like 2 strikes and you're out because I haven't liked God of Malice or God of Pain? I think, is it God of Fury is the MM one? But anyway, if you've read it, please let me know. And now we'll get to the good stuff. So first up we had Devour the Snake by Nikki St. Crow. This is the last book in the Devourer series. It is a dark fantasy retelling of the Peter Pan story and it's a spin-off from the Vicious Lost Boys series. I love the Vicious Lost Boys series. There is something in Nikki Crow's writing that she puts things into her books that I wouldn't necessarily love if anyone else did, but in her style, I'm obsessed every time. But both series are Why Choose. The Vicious Lost Boys obviously follows Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. The Devourer series follows Captain Hook, Rock, and Wendy Darling, or our version of Wendy Darling. And Devour the Snake is the story of their wedding day. It's a novella set at the end of the series just to round it all up. And in the story, Captain Hook gets kidnapped and it's down to Wendy and Rock to save him. It's just a fun little time. I rated it 3 stars because it's a novella. It doesn't add much to it. It just tied everything up with a bow. However, if by any chance Nikki St. Crow ever hears this, I will ask for the 1000th millionth time. Please can we have a Wonderland spin-off? I need it. I need it in my life, especially with everything that happened to Lainey. I need a story that goes to Wonderland and I just need to know about that world. Please, thank you. Cheers. Nikki St. Crow has got a new series that comes out in April and that's a Wizard of Oz retelling and I'm very, very excited for that one. But ultimately, Devour the Snake was 3-star read. It's a good time, it's spicy, it's Why Choose, it's just fun. It is a proper enemies to lovers, especially if you've read The Vicious Lost Boys first. I really, really recommend and rate Nikki's writing. I love it. I then went to my prompts and I had to read the lowest rated book on my Goodreads, and for that it was Their Monstrous Hearts by Yeet Turhan. I hate this book so much. It was terrible. I am a firm believer in that reading is subjective and you don't yuck on someone's yum. But this book was just, it was not it, and I don't understand how it could be it for anyone. It tells the story of a struggling writer whose grandma dies and then he thinks that all of his struggles are over and he's going to come into his millions, get over his writer's block, and he's going to be able to write this masterpiece. So he goes and stays at the house that he's inherited. Along the way, he finds out that this house isn't quite what it seems and it's hiding multiple sort of mysteries, and there's a bit of a horror element to it, it's paranormal, it's a little bit fantastical. I read this in full because it was a gift from a friend, and if it hadn't been a gift, I would have DNF'd it. The writing in this felt like it was someone's high school essay. No sentence flowed correctly, everything was quite stilted, everything was written like a teenager trying to make something atmospheric. It was painful. I can kind of see how it would work in a film, but that's only because the film has basically been done 1,000 times before and it's been done so much better than this book was. Everything was just so disjointed, the tension felt so forced, and the big plot reveal at the end was just really blatant from the start. It was just, oh no, not for me. Like the one kind of blurb on the front, or like the one recommendation on the front, is by Dua Lipa, and I'm fairly certain that this book only got published because the author is Dua Lipa's mate. I feel like she must have had to pull some strings somewhere. And it's so annoying because this cover is stunning. Like, not even, like, even without the edges, this cover is just incredible. But 1 star, not for me. I then had to read outside of my genre, and I went for That's Not My Name by Megan Lely. This is a dual narration YA thriller. It follows a teen who wakes up with absolutely no memory, other than the fact that she's in a police station and she's rescued by someone claiming to be her father. And then at the same time, a teenage boy is searching for his missing girlfriend Lola. The prose of this book, it was fast paced. I liked the characters. The characters felt fleshed out and they felt like they'd actually been thought about. The cons, I just don't like thrillers. They're just not for me. I spend the whole time thinking, is this the plot twist? Is this the plot twist? And not in a way that I'm excited to. It completely takes the enjoyment out of it for me because I'm just trying to guess the twist the whole way. And then ultimately, every time we get to the twist, I'm disappointed because I'm like, oh, well, I've already thought of like 25 different versions of this. I also feel like that specific storyline in that book and in a lot of thrillers, I've watched 1,000 times in like Criminal Minds, in CSI, in Bones, and realistically, I prefer watching them in a visual format. So I like a thriller show, I like a thriller film. They just don't work for me in book form. I rated it 2.5 stars because I don't have any major complaints of this book. It's just not, it's not my vibe at all. Like, I didn't hate it, it just sort of exists in my mind now. It's a thing. My next read was also a prompt read. Can't remember which prompt though, so I'll just put it up here. So I read Neverkeep and Echo Forge. I rated both of these books 5 stars. I loved them. Loved them so, so much. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm sure I'll say it 1,000 times. There are 2 camps for the Twisted Sisters. You love them or you hate them, and I love them. I just devour everything that they write. So these books are in the Sins of the Zodiac series, which is a spin-off from Zodiac Academy. It's set in the same world, but there's no kind of correlation and no crossover between them. It's set within an area called the Waning Lands. Within these Waning Lands, there are 4 nations that each follow one of the 4 elements. So you've got earth, air, fire, and water. Every year, the 21-year-olds from these lands converge at somewhere called Neverkeep. For a couple of months, they all kind of put their rivalries aside because there has also been a war that's been happening between these nations for hundreds of years. And they go through lessons, trials to awaken their magic and make sure they're a worthy fae. We follow Everest, who is from water, and Vesper, who is from air. These 2 basically have to form an unlikely alliance in order to get to the bottom of all the mysteries and secrets that Neverkeep is holding. These books, so we've got enemies to lovers, and I mean true enemies. We've got a slow burn, as in 2 of the characters don't even kiss until like the end of book 3. We've got, like, there is spice, but the spice that takes place is kind of nothing to do with who you're rooting for. So it's there for a good time, but you're also not like, right, well, that's it, done now. Like, you're still feeling the tension, you're still feeling that burn between the characters. It's incredible. And overall, the writing just feels a lot more mature. If you've read Zodiac Academy, it feels a lot more like reading Heartless Sky than it does reading The Awakening, but it's still a next level up from that. It's just the world they have created is so incredible and so in depth, and the relationships that you form with the characters are so intense. Like, you are rooting for these people, and it's just, they're just so good at telling a story. And I get that people look at them and think, oh, their writing isn't the best. But the stories that they weave with this writing are so good that I think it makes them even more talented, that they may not be writing this classical epic prose, but the stories are still invoking so many feelings within you as you're reading them. I love everything that they do, and I cannot wait to read Cindervale. I then went on a major side quest, and I woke up one day and I really wanted to read Chelsea Curto's BC Star series. However, I opened it and the very first page has a list of the characters, and the FMC has the same name as my son. So I couldn't proceed with it, and I'm devastated because I do really want to read it. So I had to get my sports romance kick elsewhere, and I went for Elle Kennedy's Off Campus. So this is a set of 5 interconnected standalones that follow different members of the Briar U ice hockey team and the relationships that they end up in. So there are 4 characters that they follow, and then the 5th book is kind of a massive epilogue and shows where they're all at a few years down the line. I'm going to rapid fire through these. I rated them 4, 3, 4, 3, 3. The first book follows Garrett and Hannah. I loved them. I thought they were just so cute. It was actually quite nice to read this romance and this love story where there was no ridiculous baggage. They were just young people in love. And yes, they had things going on. And yes, there's always something that's causing a bit of tension in the background. But it was just quite nice to watch these 2 people fall in love without history and without 15 years of cynicism behind them. It was enjoyable. Second book follows Logan and Grace. I love Logan. He's adorable and needs to be protected. I don't like Grace. And a lot of that is purely because of how Elle Kennedy has written her. She's got OCD, but the OCD portrayal in that book is just awful. It's very much, the clothes have to be picked up. They must be folded. There's no actual dive into the mental state of somebody with OCD, and I didn't enjoy that. I also didn't like the fact that she wants to be a therapist, and there's a subplot at the end where her reaction just goes against everything that I think she would want to do as a therapist. So I didn't enjoy that. There's also a bit of a third act breakup, and it's just really ridiculous, and I just don't think any of it was handled well in that book. It was still a nice time, but yeah. The third book is Ali, and I love them both so much. This book made me sob because of something that happens in the middle of it. It was just beautifully handled, beautifully portrayed, and I think a really realistic representation of what happens and how it can make some people spiral. I really liked how Ali didn't let that drag her down or let that tell the story of her life. She was still very much, this is what I'm doing and this is the path that I'm on, and I loved her. The 4th book follows Tucker and Sabrina. Tucker I liked. In fact, no, I really like both these characters. I hated the storyline. There's an accidental pregnancy which just isn't for me, and there are situations that happen within that book that I just don't think are realistic, and I didn't appreciate how they were handled. It just wasn't for me. The 5th book, it was unnecessary. I rated it 3 stars because it was a nice little bow at the end of them all. But realistically, it could have just been split into an epilogue at the end of each book. It didn't need to be an entire book on its own. But overall, these books are a good time. I'd recommend them. They were an excellent palate cleanser. They were stress-free reading. And I might watch the TV show. I'm not chomping at the bit to watch it, but if I had nothing to do and I could binge watch a series, I might do that. It's not going to be every week I'm desperate for the next episode to come on. The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino was my book club's book of the month. I rated this 3 stars. I liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Again, it's another one that just sort of exists. Gothic-y writing is not for me. If you do like that style of writing, I can see how you would love this book. But I like more oomph in my storylines. I don't want the entire story to be told just because of the atmospheric writing that I'm looking at. It just doesn't do it for me. This follows Gray and Kay, who are childhood best friends and are now a mage and their knight. They are trying to recover the magic that was lost when the Isle of Locke was sunk 10 years ago. This has got a slow burn romance in it. It's childhood friends. It is a beautiful story, but it didn't hit for me, which I was gutted about because I really, really wanted to love this book. I then read Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and this showed me that I love Ali's writing. I've read Bride and May. I think her FMCs are so funny. Her MMCs are hot, and all round, it's a good time. Her stories are funny, but they also have a serious kind of underlining plot, which I think she handles really, really well every time that there is this kind of serious subplot within quite a humorous story. I also love the fact that this started off as a Kylo Ren fanfiction, and you can tell because the MMC in this book is just Adam Driver. Like the description, the way he talks, everything. It is Adam Driver to a T, and I loved it. So in this, we follow a PhD student who has to fake date one of her professors in order to get a friend off her back, essentially. I've realised that I love the fake dating trope. I think I just always assumed I was going to hate it, but I don't. I think it's really fun. I think it's just a good time. And all in all, that's what this book was. It was 4 stars. Like I said, I like her writing, I like her characters. It isn't like a 5-star, this has changed my life read, and I don't think any of her books are ever going to do that. But they do the job, which is entertain me whilst I'm reading them. I then went totally off piste and I read a non-fiction because who am I? And I read How to Kill a Witch, A Guide for the Patriarchy by Claire Mitchell and Zoe Fendiozzi. This explores the history of the Scottish witch hunts that killed about 4,000 people over the course of 150 years. So it breaks down the full process of persecution to show how the patriarchy used mass hysteria and the legal structure to silence women. And it was so, so well done. It was so interesting, but so informative and still funny. Like, these authors have got such a good voice to them that it was a pleasure to read. At no point did I feel like I was just reading a boring textbook. It was so, so interesting, and I would really, really recommend this to people, especially if you like stories that are female rage or witchcraft. Just find out kind of a little bit more about where those stories are coming from and what they're inspired by in real life. It was really well done. It touches on the Salem witch trials a little bit, and yeah, it was really, really interesting. I think I rated that 4 stars. Kind of feels a bit weird to rate a non-fiction, but off the enjoyment level that I had from it and from what I learned, then yeah, I'd say 4 stars. I then read the first graphic novel for Red Rising, which is The Son of Ares, Volume 1. This is a prequel novella, but you should read it after you have read Red Rising or that first arc, because it is a prequel novella for one of the characters that you meet. So if you learn too much about them before you go into the series, it's going to ruin a couple of the plot points. It was so good. Again, I rated it 4 stars. This was such an interesting way to tell a prequel story. There's a couple more that follow up from this that I do want to read. However, I read this on my Kindle and I don't think it did it justice. So I'm going to wait until I can actually get this physically in a graphic novel format and read it that way. It just worked really well for this story. And for the fact it was just a novella, it was a really quick read. But it just made it more interesting, the fact that it was in this graphic format. I then read the Crystal Bloom series by Sarah A. Parker. And I was gaslit by this series. I was so excited to read this. I love When the Moon Hatched. It's one of my favourite books. And I was so excited to dive into more of Sarah A. Parker's writing. No. I read those 2, and then the 3rd book isn't out physically, but it's on Kindle, so I completed the series. And I'm still not entirely sure what this series is about. The characters were annoying. The FMC made all of the wrong choices. It is a dark Rapunzel retelling. It follows Orlith and the Guardian that she's been raised by Rawdon. I rated books 1 and 2 4 stars because I love the writing. I love the writing so much, and I kept just thinking, oh, something big's going to happen, something big's going to happen. Nothing big happened. There were so many things left unanswered at the end of this trilogy. There were so many characters whose decisions made no sense. There were so many scenarios that had been filled with all this tension and then never explained why this tension was there. There was very little kind of history told about the world and the thing that made these people make the decisions that they'd made. If you can hear the leaf blower outside, I do apologise. It felt like I should just be loving the vibes, and I'm not a vibe reader. I need something to actually... That's so loud outside. I need something to actually drag me in and keep me kind of interested. And like I said, first 2 books I rated 4 stars because I had such high hopes for what I was about to kind of dive into. And then I dived in and it was a really shallow pool. And I feel gaslit. So I rate the first 2 4 stars, and I rate that last book 2 stars because I wish I hadn't read it. And I am now slightly terrified for Ballad of Fallen Dragons. And if I don't enjoy Ballad, I'm just going to pretend When the Moon Hatched was a standalone, because I think that's the only way I'm going to recover from this sort of duplicitous behaviour Sarah Ray Parker has partaken in. I also really just wanted to say duplicitous then. It's a good word, isn't it? But yeah, I hated both the MMZs because there's a bit of a love triangle. I just struggle to give any positives about this, other than the writing is really good. The writing is good and the story is not. And then the last two reads of the month, we had Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Heineman. I rated this 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. It's everywhere at the minute, but if you haven't heard much about it, it's a lit RPG style book which follows Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, who are caught in a sort of snowstorm blizzard when aliens invade the planet and turn Earth into an 18-level televised dungeon game. And Carl is given 2 choices, compete or die, so therefore he competes. Honestly, hilarious. The whole style that this book was told in felt like you were playing a video game or watching someone play a video game. It was just hilarious. It's such a niche reference, but about 10 years ago, probably longer, there was a Tumblr blog called Text from Dog, and I am convinced that Matt Heineman must have been a fan of this, because the way that Princess Donut speaks, especially in like the chat function to Carl, is so similar to Text from Dog. And I'm going to put screenshots of Text from Dog up here because it was such a good time of my life. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. I thought it was the funniest thing that had ever existed. And this is probably why I'm going to get told that it's not funny and it's actually really lame. But at the time, I thought it was hilarious. I need to know who Agatha is. Like, with a burning need, I need to know who she is. And the tone of it, even though it's absolutely not child friendly, felt like I was a kid and playing games like Monkey Island. Just dry humour from objects that shouldn't have the humour that they have in this book. Just are, honestly, if you're put off by reading it because you think it's going to be too like bro humour, ignore it. It's so funny, and I really recommend that book. And then the final book that I read this month was Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is a urban fantasy. It is a fantasy crime saga, and it's marketed as Godfather with fantasy vibes, which totally fits. It focuses on the Cowell family, who head up the No Peak clan, who control the production of jade in this land where jade is used to enhance the strengths of Greenbone warriors. This book felt like a TV drama in book form, which makes very little sense, and I'm explaining it badly. But think Yellowstone as a book, or Succession, or Brothers and Sisters. It was like the fantasy within this book was so light, but it focuses mainly on like the familial relationships and the internal politics within a gang, as well as kind of the external things that they're having to all navigate. It very much gives that whole, as siblings we don't get on, but actually the family will always give a united front, and if anyone goes against us, then we unite, but we've still got all this in-house like warring going on. I loved it. It was prime example of 5 stories of feeling, because I had no complaints about this book, but I rated it 4.5 because it just didn't give me that feeling inside me. But cannot wait to continue with that series. And I think we've done it. I'm hoping that for once this is kind of an under 30-minute video. I've tried to speed through a little bit. I'm going to try and think of ways that I can change up my wrap-ups, because I just don't think people want to sit here and listen to me for half an hour. If you have made it this far, thank you so much as always. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you have nothing to say, then leave me a cat emoji for Princess Donut, and I will see you next time. Bye!